She lived in a small apartment building in a quiet neighborhood. The building wasn't fancy, but it had a sense of life. People came and went. Children played in the courtyard, and sometimes neighbors would chat from their windows. Among all of this, she quietly went about her life. She wasn't loud or flashy, but she had a heart that noticed things others ignored. She worked during the day, sometimes late into the night, but she always made time to check on her neighbors, smile at passers-by, and help when she could. One evening, as the sun was setting and the sky turned a soft orange, she noticed a small boy sitting alone near the corner of the courtyard. He looked uneasy. His clothes were worn and his shoes had holes in them. His small hands were clasped tightly together as if he was holding on to a secret that scared him. His eyes, big and dark, darted around nervously. Something about him made her stop in her tracks. She had seen many children playing or running around, but there was something different about this boy. Fear clung to him like a shadow. She didn't want to scare him, so she approached slowly, keeping a gentle distance. "Hi there," she said softly. Her voice wasn't loud or commanding. It was calm, kind. The boy flinched, his eyes widening, but he didn't run away. "Are you okay?" she asked. He looked down, fidgeting with his hands, and didn't answer. She noticed a bruise forming near his temple, faint but visible in the fading light. Her heart clenched. Something wasn't right. Over the next few days, she kept seeing him around the building. Sometimes he was sitting alone on the steps, sometimes peeking through the playground fence. Each time she tried to make small gestures. She would wave at him, leave a small snack nearby, or smile and nod when she passed him. Slowly, he started to respond. At first, it was a timid nod. Later, a soft hi would escape his lips. Every little step felt monumental to her. She knew fear could take hold of a child in ways most adults couldn't understand. One rainy afternoon, she found him huddled in the corner near the garbage bins. The rain had soaked his thin jacket, and his small frame shivered with cold. Without thinking, she ran inside, grabbed a dry towel and a warm blanket, and sat next to him under the building's small overhang. "It's okay," she whispered. "You don't have to be scared here." His eyes met hers, and she saw the flicker of hope that had been buried under layers of fear. That day, he allowed her to wrap the blanket around him. It was a small act, but to him it felt like a lifeline. Gradually, she learned more about his situation. The boy rarely spoke about his home, and when he did, it was in fragments. She discovered that he was living with a guardian who didn't treat him well. Sometimes he would come to her with tears in his eyes, trembling as he described moments of fear and confusion. She listened patiently, never judging, never rushing him. She gave him the comfort of knowing that someone cared. Someone would believe him when no one else did. She also realized that protecting him would not be easy. The adults in his life were not kind, and the neighbors often turned a blind eye. Many didn't want to get involved, afraid of conflict or trouble, but she knew she couldn't ignore it. Every child deserved safety, warmth, and the chance to feel loved. So, she began thinking carefully, planning how she could help without putting herself or the boy in danger. The first thing she did was create a safe space for him. She cleared a small corner of her apartment, adding a few toys, blankets, and some books. She invited him over occasionally, making sure he knew this was a place where he could relax and be himself. She didn't push him too hard. She let him come when he felt ready. Over time, he started to trust her. He would linger a little longer, speak a little louder, and smile. A rare, precious smile that lit up his small face. She also reached out to the authorities carefully. She didn't want the boy to feel betrayed or scared, so she made sure everything was done sensitively. She reported what she had seen, giving clear details and expressing the urgency of the situation. It was not an easy process. Sometimes she felt frustrated with the slow pace, with the skepticism and bureaucracy that seemed to stall every step. But she persisted. She couldn't give up. She had made a promise in her heart that this child would not be left alone in fear. There were times when she felt the weight of it all. Working long hours, managing her home, and taking care of this small child who needed her attention was exhausting. But every time she saw him laugh or hear him tell a small story without fear, she knew it was worth it. She found strength she didn't know she had. She found joy in the small victories, making him a warm meal, helping him with homework, or simply listening to his quiet thoughts. Neighbors started noticing the bond between them. Some whispered, some admired, and a few even offered help, but she didn't do it for recognition. She did it because it was the right thing to do. Because she understood that sometimes one person's courage and kindness could make the difference between despair and hope. One evening, as she tucked him in after another long day, he whispered, "Thank you for helping me." His voice was soft, hesitant, but filled with sincerity. Her eyes welled up. She held his hand gently and said, "You're welcome. You're safe now, and you deserve to feel safe every day." That night, as she lay awake, she thought about how fragile life could be, how easily a child's innocence could be stolen, and how important it was to stand up, even when it was hard. Over the weeks and months, he began to open up more. He told her stories about school, about small joys he had never shared with anyone. He laughed more freely, played more often, and slowly the fear that once clouded his eyes began to fade. She celebrated every small change, every tiny victory, knowing that the road ahead would still be challenging but hopeful. She also began teaching him about kindness in subtle ways. She encouraged him to notice small acts of love around him, to understand that the world could be both cruel and beautiful, and that he had the power to choose goodness in his own life. He absorbed her lessons like a sponge, slowly building confidence, courage, and hope. One afternoon, she took him to the local park. They walked slowly, hands brushing against each other, sharing stories. The boy pointed to the swings and whispered, "I used to be too scared to go there." She smiled gently. "It's okay," she said. "You can try now. You're stronger than you think." He hesitated, then climbed onto the swing. For the first time, he swung freely, laughter spilling into the air. Watching him, she felt a mix of pride and relief. She knew she had made a difference, and yet, she knew there was still much more to do. She understood that healing would take time, that fear would not disappear overnight. But she also knew that her presence, her patience, and her love were already planting seeds of change. She had given him a glimpse of safety, trust, and hope, things that had been missing from his life for too long. As the sun set that evening, painting the sky with shades of pink and gold, she looked at the boy sitting on the swing. She realized that this small act of courage, of opening her heart to someone in need, was shaping not just his life but also hers. She felt a quiet joy, a sense of purpose, and an unspoken promise that she would stand by him as long as he needed her. She knew that life could be unpredictable, that challenges would come, but she also knew that kindness had power. She had taken a step into the unknown, guided by her heart, and that step was already changing everything. And so, in that quiet neighborhood, under the soft glow of the evening sky, a bond was forming, a bond built on trust, love, and courage, a bond that would weather storms, overcome fear, and grow stronger with each passing day. She had protected him from the shadows that haunted him, and in doing so, she had given him the chance to believe in goodness again. Little did she know, this was only the beginning of a journey that would not only change his life, but would eventually lead to a moment years later when her quiet courage and kindness would come back to her in a way she could never have imagined. She knew that helping the boy was only the beginning. Protecting him from danger was one thing, but helping him heal from the fear and pain he carried inside was another. Every time he came to her apartment, she noticed the way he flinched at loud noises, the way he hesitated before speaking, and the way his small body seemed tense even in moments of quiet. She understood that trust and safety could not be forced. They had to grow slowly, like a flower opening to the sun. She started spending more time with him, creating routines that would make him feel secure. Every afternoon, she would meet him at the corner where he waited after school. Sometimes they would walk together to the small park nearby, and other times they would sit on the bench near the building and talk quietly. At first, the boy barely spoke, nodding or shaking his head when she asked simple questions. But she didn't rush him. She knew that patience was the first step toward healing. Slowly, she began introducing small games and activities. She would bring coloring books, puzzles, or small toys, and let him choose what he wanted to do. She never pressured him. She simply offered choices and smiled when he accepted. Each day she saw tiny changes. The way he looked at her while holding a crayon, the small laugh he gave when he completed a puzzle, the way he began to respond with a few words instead of silence. All of it showed that he was starting to feel safe. But she also knew that safety inside her apartment was not enough. The world outside was still full of danger for him, and she could not shield him from it entirely. So she started looking for other ways to protect him. She quietly reached out to people she trusted, teachers, social workers, and even neighbors who had shown kindness before. She shared what she knew, careful not to scare the boy, and worked to create a network of support. It wasn't easy. Some people doubted her, some thought she was exaggerating, and some simply didn't want to get involved. But she did not give up. She knew that one child's life could be changed if someone was willing to stand up and act. She also learned that protecting him required courage she had not expected to find within herself. She had to navigate bureaucracy, push through skepticism, and sometimes face hostility from those who did not understand why she was intervening. During this time, she noticed that the boy was slowly opening up about his feelings. One day, as they sat on the small balcony of her apartment, watching the rain drizzle over the streets, he whispered, "I'm scared all the time at home." His voice trembled, but there was a hint of relief that someone finally knew. She gently took his hand and said, "It's okay to be scared, but you don't have to face it alone. I'm here and I won't leave you." These moments were delicate and precious. She learned that healing a child from fear required both patience and consistency. She could not promise that everything would be perfect, but she could promise that he would always have someone who cared. And she kept that promise day after day through small acts of love, a warm meal, a kind word, a listening ear. There were days when the boy would refuse to come to her apartment, retreating back into his fear. She never forced him. Instead, she would leave small gifts outside his door, a wrapped snack, a drawing, or a note with simple words of encouragement. Each gift was a quiet reminder that someone was thinking of him, that he was not forgotten. Over time, these small gestures began to chip away at the walls of fear he had built around himself. The boy also started showing small signs of courage. One day, he picked up a book she had left for him and began reading aloud. His voice was soft at first, shaky, but he kept going. She sat nearby, nodding and smiling, letting him know it was okay to take his time. By the end of the week, he was reading more confidently, even laughing at the funny parts of the story. For her, these small victories were monumental. They were proof that her efforts were making a real difference. At the same time, she began teaching him about boundaries and self-respect. She explained in simple words that no one had the right to hurt him, and that it was okay to speak up when he felt unsafe. She encouraged him to recognize his feelings and to understand that his emotions mattered. These lessons were subtle, woven into everyday conversations, but they planted seeds of self-confidence and self-worth that would grow stronger with time. However, there were still challenges. Sometimes the boy would come back from home with bruises or cuts, and his stories would be fragmented or fearful. She felt a deep ache in her heart but remained calm in front of him. She knew that showing panic or anger could make him retreat further. Instead, she cleaned his wounds, whispered comforting words, and reassured him that he was safe with her. Each time, she silently vowed to do everything she could to protect him. She also realized that part of her role was to help him navigate his feelings of guilt and confusion. Many children in abusive situations blame themselves for what happens at home. She reminded him gently, "You are not at fault. None of this is your fault. You deserve love and safety." Slowly, he began to understand that he was not to blame, that the fear and pain were not his responsibility, and that there were people in the world who cared about him. One evening, she took him to a quiet cafe nearby. It was a small treat, something special to show him that life could have simple joys. He hesitated at first, unsure if it was okay to enjoy himself, but she encouraged him with a soft smile. They shared a small slice of cake, and for a moment his laughter rang out freely. It was a sound that warmed her heart and reminded her why she had taken this journey. Moments like these were rare treasures, small glimpses of a childhood that should have been full of safety and happiness all along. She also began involving him in small responsibilities, teaching him practical skills and nurturing his independence. They cooked simple meals together, cleaned the apartment in fun ways, and even did small chores outside. These tasks were not just about learning skills. They were about building confidence, a sense of accomplishment, and the understanding that he could take control of parts of his life. She praised him for his efforts, making sure he felt capable and valued. Over time, she noticed a remarkable transformation. The boy who had once flinched at every sound and looked at the world with suspicion began to smile more. He played with other children cautiously but with growing confidence. He started speaking in full sentences, asking questions, and even sharing small stories about his dreams. Each change was a victory, a testament to the quiet power of care, consistency, and love. Despite the progress, she knew the journey was far from over. Healing from abuse is not a straight path, and setbacks were inevitable. There were days when he would retreat, lash out, or show fear in ways that reminded her of the past trauma. But she faced each challenge with patience, understanding, and unwavering support. She never let frustration or anger enter her interactions. She understood that his fear was not about her, it was about what he had endured. Through all of this, their bond grew stronger. He began to see her as a guardian, someone he could trust completely. She became a safe harbor in a world that had often been cruel, and for her, this bond was a quiet affirmation of her purpose, a reminder that even small acts of courage and kindness could create profound change. By the end of this period, the boy had grown noticeably in confidence and self-esteem. He still carried memories of fear, but he also carried hope. He began to dream about school, friendships, and even a future where he could live without fear. And she watched with quiet pride as he began to step into a life that was not defined by pain but by possibility. She understood that protecting him was not just about shielding him from harm, it was about teaching him to believe in himself, to know that he mattered, and to trust that the world could hold kindness and love. She had given him more than safety. She had given him a foundation for life, a sense of dignity and worth that he had been denied for too long. And so, in the quiet moments of their days together, the laughter, the shared meals, the whispered reassurances, she realized that true protection was more than keeping him out of harm's way. It was about being there fully and patiently, guiding him, nurturing him, and standing firm in her belief that he deserved a better life. Little did she know, the lessons she was teaching him, the care she was showing, and the love she was quietly giving would shape not only his life, but also set the stage for a moment years later when the boy, now a young man, would find a way to repay her kindness in a way that would touch her heart forever. Time passed, and the boy slowly grew into a teenager. The little child who once flinched at every sound and hid in corners was now starting to walk with a steadier step. His eyes, once shadowed by fear, now held a spark of confidence. This transformation didn't happen overnight. It was the result of countless small acts of care, patience, and guidance from the woman who had taken him under her wing. She had become a constant in his life, a reliable presence he could lean on whenever the world outside felt harsh. School became a place of both challenges and opportunities for him. At first, he struggled to make friends. He was shy, hesitant to join group activities, and wary of anyone who tried to get too close. But she encouraged him, gently nudging him to engage in small ways. "Try talking to that kid over there," she would say softly. "Just ask him about his homework. You don't have to be loud, just be yourself." Slowly, he began to interact with others. He discovered that some people were kind, that friendships could be safe, and that laughter could be shared without fear. The woman also helped him with his studies. She never scolded him when he didn't understand something or got a problem wrong. Instead, she guided him, explained patiently, and celebrated his small victories. "See," she would say, smiling warmly, "you can do this. I knew you had it in you." Her encouragement mattered more than grades. It helped him believe that he could achieve things, that he could overcome challenges, and that his past did not define his future. But school was not the only place where he learned to grow. She continued to teach him about life beyond the classroom. They would take long walks in the neighborhood, discussing simple lessons about kindness, honesty, and responsibility. She would point out small acts of compassion in others and explain how they could inspire similar goodness in his life. She taught him that it was okay to make mistakes, that what mattered most was learning and trying again. As he grew older, he started to express himself more openly. He shared his thoughts, his dreams, and even his fears with her. Sometimes he would talk about wanting to be someone who could help others, just as she had helped him. She would listen, nod, and encourage him, telling him that those dreams were possible if he stayed kind, focused, and determined. Every conversation, every shared dream, strengthened the bond between them. There were still difficult days. Memories of fear and pain would occasionally resurface, and he would retreat into silence or show anger in ways he could not control. She never punished him or scolded him for these moments. Instead, she offered comfort, understanding, and space. She would sit quietly beside him, holding his hand or simply being present until he felt ready to speak again. Through this, he learned that emotions were normal, that feeling fear or sadness didn't make him weak, and that someone could care for him no matter what. The neighborhood began to notice the change in him. The shy, fearful boy was becoming a polite, thoughtful young man. Teachers praised his efforts, classmates started to include him, and neighbors smiled when they saw him walk past with a little more confidence than before. But it was not the recognition that mattered to him. It was the sense of security and love he felt from her, the understanding that someone truly believed in him. She also introduced him to new experiences. Sometimes they would go to the library to explore books about faraway places, history, and science. Other times they would cook meals together, learning new recipes and sharing laughter over small mistakes. She encouraged him to try sports, arts, or music, anything that could help him discover his talents and interests. These experiences were not only fun, they helped him learn patience, practice, and persistence. One day she decided to take a small risk. She suggested that he participate in a school talent event. He hesitated, unsure if he could do it, worried about being judged. But she smiled gently and said, "I will be there. You just show up and do your best. That's all that matters." With her support, he performed a small presentation about a topic he loved. At first his voice trembled, but as he continued, confidence grew. By the end, he received applause not for perfection, but for his courage. That moment stayed with him. It taught him that bravery is about trying even when you are scared. Meanwhile, she continued to navigate the complexities of protecting him from his past. She stayed in touch with social workers and teachers, always advocating for him. She quietly handled challenges that arose at home or in the community, ensuring he had opportunities to thrive. There were times when she felt exhausted, sometimes frustrated, but she never wavered in her commitment. The stakes were too high to give up, and she knew the impact of her steady presence would last a lifetime. Through all of this, she never sought praise or recognition. She did not do it to be admired or to be thanked. Her motivation was simple. She knew that every child deserved safety, love, and a chance to grow. Her belief in him never faltered, even when obstacles appeared too large to overcome, and in return, he began to believe in himself. Over the years, he started setting small goals for himself. He wanted to do better in school, to participate in extracurricular activities, and to help others in ways that she had helped him. She guided him, encouraging him to plan, practice, and persevere. Each step he took was a testament to the lessons she had quietly taught him about resilience, kindness, and courage. One summer afternoon, as they sat in the park sharing a small picnic, he said, "I want to do something good for someone, just like you did for me." Her heart swelled with pride. "That's wonderful," she said softly. "Kindness is powerful. It can change lives, and every act of goodness you do will make the world a little brighter." That conversation became a turning point for him. He began to see his past not only as something painful but also as a source of strength, a reminder of how one person's care could make a real difference. She also helped him navigate friendships. She taught him how to choose friends who were kind, supportive, and trustworthy. She reminded him that real friends respect boundaries, listen with empathy, and celebrate your successes without jealousy. Slowly, he formed relationships that reflected these lessons, friendships that nurtured him and helped him grow. Despite all the progress, there were moments when fear crept back. The boy, now a teenager, would sometimes have nightmares or anxiety about returning home. She never dismissed these feelings. Instead, she reassured him, encouraged him to talk about them, and taught him techniques to calm himself. Deep breathing, positive thinking, and focusing on things he could control. With her guidance, he learned that fear could be managed and that he had the tools to face it. As he matured, she also began preparing him for life beyond her immediate care. She encouraged independence, taught responsibility, and helped him set long-term goals. She explained that growing up didn't mean leaving kindness behind, but that he would need to make decisions carefully and stay true to the values she had helped him develop. These lessons were subtle, often woven into everyday moments, but they shaped his understanding of life in profound ways. By the time he reached the later years of his teenage life, the transformation was remarkable. The boy who had once been too afraid to speak up was now articulate and confident. The child who had hidden from the world was now exploring it with curiosity and courage. And through it all, the woman remained a steady presence, his guide, protector, and mentor. She often reflected on the journey they had shared. It had not been easy. There were challenges that tested her patience, her strength, and her resolve. But the rewards, the moments of laughter, courage, and growth, made every struggle worthwhile. She had not only helped him survive, she had helped him thrive. And the boy, now approaching adulthood, had begun to dream of a future where he could make a difference in the lives of others. He thought about the woman who had saved him, who had believed in him when no one else would, and he carried her lessons in his heart. He knew that one day, he would have the chance to show his gratitude, to repay the kindness that had changed the course of his life. But for now, he focused on learning, growing, and becoming the person she had helped him believe he could be. Through these years of growth, the bond between them remained unbreakable. It was built not only on trust and care, but also on mutual respect and understanding. She had guided him with patience, love, and wisdom, and in return he had learned courage, resilience, and hope. And though challenges still lay ahead, both of them knew that together they could face anything. In the quiet moments of reflection, she would sometimes smile, thinking of how far he had come. She knew that her efforts were making a lasting impact, that the lessons she had taught would shape his choices, his character, and his future. And she understood something profound, that kindness, when offered without expectation, had the power to change a life forever. Little did she know that the story of their bond was far from over. The years ahead would bring new challenges, but also an opportunity for her to witness the full circle of her care, the moment when the boy, now a young man, would find a way to repay her in a way she could never have imagined. Time had a way of moving quickly, even when moments felt slow. The boy, now a young adult, had grown into a confident, thoughtful, and capable person. The woman watched him with quiet pride, remembering the small, fragile child who had once hidden in fear. He had come a long way, and it was clear that the lessons, care, and patience she had given him were shaping the person he had become. But life, as it always does, had begun to pull him in new directions. He had started college in a nearby city, pursuing a path he had never dared to imagine when he was younger. He excelled in his studies, joined small community projects, and even volunteered at local programs helping other children. All of this was influenced by the woman who had guided him through his most difficult years. She had shown him the meaning of kindness, the importance of resilience, and the strength that comes from caring for others. Their daily routines together became less frequent. Where once he had visited her apartment nearly every day, now their meetings were reserved for weekends or holidays. The quiet apartment felt emptier without his constant presence, but she knew that this was part of life. She had prepared him to stand on his own 2 feet, and now it was time for him to step into a world beyond her immediate care. Despite the physical distance, their bond remained strong. Phone calls, video chats, and occasional visits kept their connection alive. He would share stories of his experiences, the challenges he faced, and the lessons he was learning. She listened, offered advice, and celebrated his successes quietly. Even though she missed the daily closeness, she took comfort in knowing that he was thriving. She noticed subtle changes in him too. He had grown more independent, capable of making decisions and even offering guidance to others. The qualities she had nurtured, empathy, patience, courage, had become part of his character. He was no longer just a boy learning to trust the world. He was a young adult ready to navigate it with wisdom and compassion. At the same time, she reflected on her own life. Caring for him had been a significant part of her identity for many years. Now she found herself with time to focus on other areas she had neglected: friends, hobbies, and personal growth. Yet her heart remained tethered to him. She knew that no matter how far he went, her guidance had shaped him in ways that could never be undone. The woman also recognized that their journey together had been as transformative for her as it had been for him. She had learned patience, resilience, and the quiet strength of caring for someone unconditionally. She had faced moments of fear and frustration, yet she had found courage she didn't know she possessed. And in return, she had witnessed the miraculous power of transformation, the change of a life once clouded by fear into one filled with hope and potential. Over the months, he began to take on responsibilities that required him to be away more often. Internships, volunteer work, and school projects demanded time and focus. She understood that this was part of his growth. He needed to experience the world independently, make mistakes, and learn from them. She gave him the freedom to do so, offering guidance when he sought it, but never hovering or controlling. During this period, she noticed another change. He had begun to think about giving back. The young man often spoke about helping children who were struggling, about creating opportunities for them, and about making a difference in their lives. He attributed these thoughts to the lessons he had learned from her, the understanding that one person's care could transform a life. He carried that idea in his heart, preparing for a time when he could repay the kindness he had received. Although their daily interactions had lessened, the small moments they shared became more meaningful. She noticed the confidence in his voice, the way he made eye contact, and the calm assurance in his actions. He was no longer the frightened boy she had once protected. He was a young man ready to face the challenges of life. And through all of this, she remained a quiet anchor, a reminder of love, safety, and the power of unwavering support. Even as he built his life outside her apartment, she continued her work in the community. She found herself helping other children in need, quietly supporting families and offering guidance to those who sought it. The experience of raising him with care and patience had given her a profound understanding of human nature and the ways in which kindness could ripple through lives. She knew that her influence extended beyond just him. It touched others indirectly, inspiring change quietly and powerfully. One afternoon he came to visit her after several months away. She noticed immediately how much he had matured. His posture was confident, his speech measured, and his eyes carried a calm determination. They sat together in the small living room, sharing a simple meal. For a moment it felt like old times, yet everything had changed. He spoke about college, his experiences, and his goals for the future. She listened, proud of the young man he had become, yet mindful of the journey still ahead. During this visit, he began to speak about his desire to make a lasting difference. He shared ideas about programs for children, ways to help those in difficult situations, and the hope that he could give back the kindness that had shaped his life. She smiled quietly, realizing that the seeds she had planted years ago were now growing into something powerful and meaningful. She encouraged him, offering advice, perspective, and the reassurance that he already had the tools to create change. The young man also spoke about gratitude. He told her that he often thought about the sacrifices she had made, the patience she had shown, and the love she had offered without expectation. He described how her guidance had given him the courage to pursue his dreams, the strength to face challenges, and the understanding of what it meant to care for others. She listened quietly, feeling a mix of pride, humility, and quiet joy. She had never sought recognition, but hearing his words touched her deeply. As the months turned into years, their bond remained strong, even as he built his own life. He visited occasionally, shared milestones over the phone, and continued to draw from the lessons she had taught him. And though their daily routines had changed, the foundation of trust, love, and guidance remained unshaken. She often reflected on how far they had both come. The boy who had once been frightened, withdrawn, and uncertain was now a confident, capable, and compassionate young man. And she too had grown, learning the quiet power of patience, the depth of resilience, and the transformative effect of love. Together they had faced challenges, celebrated victories, and created a bond that would last a lifetime. In the quiet moments, she sometimes wondered if he would ever be able to show his gratitude in a way that matched the depth of her care. She did not need it, of course, but she could not deny the thought crossed her mind. She had given so much, and she hoped that, in time, he would find a way to carry forward the lessons he had learned and, perhaps, repay the kindness that had shaped him. Even as life pulled them in different directions, she remained his constant supporter. She knew that he would face challenges without her physical presence, but she trusted in the foundation they had built together. The principles she had instilled, kindness, courage, and resilience, would guide him, just as they always had. The young man, now approaching adulthood, also carried a quiet determination. He wanted to honor the care and guidance he had received. He wanted to ensure that the sacrifices, patience, and love shown to him would not be forgotten. And in his heart, he knew that one day he would have the opportunity to repay her in a way that truly mattered, a moment that would close the circle of their journey together. As they spent these last few years together before he fully stepped into independence, the woman continued to support him in small but meaningful ways. She offered advice on life decisions, encouraged him to pursue his passions, and reminded him of the importance of integrity and empathy. Each interaction reinforced the lessons they had built together, ensuring that the young man carried her influence with him as he navigated the wider world. Though they were beginning to live more separate lives, their connection never weakened. She remained his guide, mentor, and unwavering supporter, while he continued to grow into a man capable of making his own choices, facing his fears, and helping others. And beneath the surface of their lives, the quiet promise lingered, the promise that her kindness, once given without expectation, would eventually be met with gratitude in a way that neither of them could yet fully imagine. And so life moved forward. He pursued his goals, faced challenges, and continued to build a life that reflected the lessons she had taught him. She continued her work, her support, and her quiet acts of love in the community, always mindful of the ripple effect one person's care could have. Their story, though evolving, remained deeply intertwined, a testament to the power of patience, guidance, and unconditional kindness. Little did she know, the years ahead would bring a moment when her quiet courage and unwavering care would come, full circle. A moment that would remind both of them of the profound impact of love, compassion, and the simple act of choosing to help someone in need. Years had passed since the young man had first left the woman's side to begin building his life independently. He had grown into a responsible, kind, and confident adult. The lessons she had instilled in him, the courage to face fear, the power of kindness, and the understanding of resilience, had become the foundation of his life. Yet despite the distance and the passing of time, he never forgot the woman who had saved him, guided him, and given him a chance when no one else would. One bright morning, as she went about her usual routine in the quiet apartment, a knock sounded at the door. It was firm, deliberate, and immediately caught her attention. She wasn't expecting anyone. Visitors were rare these days, and her small apartment often felt empty without the constant presence of the young man she had once cared for. She opened the door cautiously, unsure of who it could be. Standing there was a man, well-dressed, confident, and with a warm smile. There was something familiar in his eyes, something that made her pause and look closer. "Hello," he said softly. "I hope I'm not disturbing you." His voice carried a calm confidence, yet there was a hint of nervousness beneath it. She studied his face, searching for a memory, and then it hit her. It was him. The small, frightened boy she had once protected had grown into a man standing before her. Her heart skipped a beat. Tears welled up in her eyes as the memories rushed back, the small hands trembling in fear, the hesitant steps toward her apartment, the quiet moments of trust slowly building between them. She could hardly believe it was him. "Is it really you?" she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. He nodded, smiling, and said, "Yes, it's me. I've come to see you, to thank you, and to give back what you gave me all those years ago." The woman stepped aside, allowing him to enter. Her apartment, once filled with the chatter and laughter of a small boy, now seemed almost surreal with his presence as a fully grown man. They sat together, and he began to speak, not just words of gratitude, but stories of his journey, the challenges he had faced, and the successes he had achieved. He spoke of how her guidance had shaped his choices, how her care had given him confidence, and how the lessons she had taught had become a compass for his life. "I don't know if I can ever repay you for everything you did," he said softly, "but I want to try. You gave me safety when I was terrified. You believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself, and I want to make sure you know how much that meant, and how